Call to order the February 3rd, 2025 Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners meeting. If everyone will join me in a moment of silence for a City of Concord fireman, Chris Hartzell, who had passed away. We'll have a moment of silence for him. Thank you. All right. Also, before we get started with the agenda, I would like to let everyone know that we have our Deputy County Manager here with us this evening, who is filling the role of the open County Manager's position. And so we welcome her to the dais with us, and we appreciate you, Kelly. And we have been working closely together for the past couple of weeks, and I've been impressed with your responsiveness and your dedication and your hard work, and I want you to know that we appreciate it. So, welcome to the dais. All right, with that being said, we have, I'll entertain a motion for the approval of the work session agenda.
So moved.
Are all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. Next, we'll move on to discussion items for no action. This will be the public safety training facility, and this will be Kelly.
Thank you. We have been working on the public training, regional public training facility planning for probably 2 to 3 years. Kyle was carrying that project. I picked it up last fall. We were putting the finishing touches on it, have been for a while. There was a lot of negotiation involved with this one because it involves both Concord and Kannapolis and the volunteer fire department, so it's a large project. And so we now have the strategic plan that we wanted to put in front of you. And so with that, Daniel Matoba is going to be taking control and telling you all about the plan, master plan.
You can go ahead with your presentation.
I think he was talking, but it wasn't. Daniel, we might be having some technical difficulties. Give us just a second. Should be ready.
Frank, say something for us, so we see if we can do this, Daniel, or
All right, we're still having difficulties. Hold on just a second, please.
While we're waiting on that, I did forget to mention at the beginning of the meeting, Commissioner Pittman is feeling under the weather today, and so we wish him luck in getting better. But he sent his regards. Also, Commissioner Shue sends his regards that he was unable to be here this evening.
well done, Daniel.
Daniel, can you try again? All right, Daniel, we're going to go to a couple of other items, and we'll come back to you when we get our technical difficulties figured out.
All right, so we'll come back to item 3.1. Moving on to item 4.1, this will be finance. We have Jim Howden here with us, our finance director.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is the budget amendment trying to get approved for the financing we did back in October-November timeframe. So again, this budget amendment allows us to get the budgets where they were approved, to get the financing, the cost of closing the financing. Also, we'd get to reimburse ourselves. with some of the funds from the projects we upfronted, and this budget amendment allows me to go ahead and do that.
Okay. And I know that there were some questions at our previous meeting about some of the details, and you have gotten us that information, and thank you very much.
You are welcome.
for that.
I'll work on making sure that's up front going forward.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Is there any questions from any of the board members? Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to item 4.2, the Sheriff's Department acceptance of fees of the interlocal detention agreement. We have Chief Tessa Burchett.
Good evening, how are you?
Great, how are you?
Very good. So the first item that I have on the agenda is the acceptance of fees from Union County Sheriff's Office. They're having to do some construction on their detention center, and to do that, they have to move pods out, entire pods of inmates out. We currently actually keep female inmates for them, and that's under the approved $70 per inmate agreement that we took before you approximately 2 years ago. The difference with this one being that they're having to bring over full pods of inmates, we would open 2 pods in the annex. To do that, though, we don't have enough manpower. We have space, but not manpower. So Union County would send up detention officers to keep those pods secure, and then pay the overtime of one of our officers to work the control panel. So that's the difference with this and why we're taking it before the board. We're going to be accepting some more monies, some overtime monies, and then the same $70 per head per day for each inmate to bring in for revenues.
Sounds great. Thank you. I know that we have discussed this several times in the past, as far as whenever we have open availability within our detention center, that, you know, we can rent these beds essentially.
Absolutely.
And just so it's a reminder for everyone that this is not costing the Cabarrus County taxpayers
Correct.
any additional monies.
Correct. Yep,
Any
they'll
other questions?
Actually, revenues.
Yeah, any other questions? All right. Next on our agenda, I believe you have this item is for the medical cost.
Yes, the medical cost, what this is the Sheriff's Office contracts with Southern Health Partners for the inmate health care, basically. They provide nurses and health care for every inmate housed in our detention facility. They cover up to $5,000 per inmate, the contract does. However, we also have a budget line item that is to pay for any cost above that $5,000 per head. Well, unfortunately, occasionally there is medical emergencies of inmates where they require advanced care, and we had one of those instances. They were had to be hospitalized, and the cost went well above both our $5,000 per inmate and the budgeted cost pool to cover that. So in the past, what we've done is that's come from contingency funds. What we're doing now is a budget amendment to take this from the revenues, similar to what we said, the Union County inmates, but this is from our SMCP, or State Misdemeanor Confinement Program, which are revenues. We have money in this account to go ahead and pay for this, so it's just a budget amendment to move those monies over and pay that.
Okay. Any questions from board members? All right. Thank you. I guess. Okay. Going back to another item that you have would be the agreement with the town of Harrisburg for additional positions.
Yes, and I'm bringing up Captain Chris Meismer, interestingly enough, that
Welcome, Mr.
is our
Meismer.
captain in Harrisburg, to explain the contract.
Commissioners. In 2020, the town of Harrisburg conducted a law enforcement feasibility study to determine the appropriate amount of deputies to be in the town. Once that study was done, they realized they wanted more officers, so over the next 8 years, they started a build-out plan to add additional deputies. The budget 2025 portion of this build-out asked for them to add an additional 4 deputies, 2 sergeants, 2 standard deputies that will be assigned to traffic patrol, all fully funded by the town of Harrisburg. That's the portion of this part of the 25 build-out. It'll go all the way through 2028.
Okay. All right. Everyone's seen the information in the attached agenda item. And again, this will be reimbursement to the county from the town of Harrisburg.
Correct.
Is there any questions from board members? No?
This is something they approved for FY25.
Right.
We wanted to hold off until we had positions filled.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. We will move on to
Final item.
yeah, let's see here, to the surplus
Yes.
K-9.
So what we're asking is to surplus one of our working canines who basically through, basically a series of time developed some medical issues. The vet basically said, this is going to be something that continues. So we're going to surplus this canine. He will actually be housed with his former handler. And all, basically, he signed a waiver, basically. He's the sole, person responsible for cost of medical bills and feeding the dog and that type of thing from here on out. So we'd like to surplus this dog. And we have, as part of our normal budget cycle, funds to replace him when the time is right.
Okay. Any question from board members? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and while we're still on discussing the sheriff's department, then I believe our presentation's ready for the Public Safety Training Facility Master Plan.
Testing? Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Good evening. And if I can see the screen okay, looks like you can see my screen.
Yes.
Great. Thank you for your time, Frank and Daniel from RDG. As Kelly mentioned, we've been working away at a strategic plan for the Public Safety Training Center, and that involved many entities, both Fire and Police in Kannapolis, Fire and Police in Concord, and the Sheriff and Fire, our EMS department with the county as well. As we embark on this process, there are a few key questions that we hope that the strategic plan hopes to answer. And I didn't intend on reading everything, but the real answer, the real questions we hope to answer: who will use the training center, what training will be provided, costs to both build and operate, and then obviously what does it look like as it is laid out on a particular site. So in order to do that, we all understand that budgets and time are not unlimited, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look at the big picture to garner a real understanding of how will this facility not only be used in the immediate future, but in the broader sense of how it may look to everybody in the future as if a master plan were to be developed. So in order to do that, we engage all of the agencies that are involved and ask them, if you had the ability to do all your training in one place, what classes would you provide there? And so this is the class list of everything to date that we know of today that would be provided or seek to be provided at a training center. This does not include any of those small trainings that may happen in a briefing room at a station or around the table at the firehouse. This is simply things that people or agencies would travel to a training center to do. And we always want to mention too that this is not a version or in any way seeking are you doing training appropriately. That all of the agencies are getting the training they need in one way or another. It may not be the most efficient way, it may not be the safest or best way to do it in a consistent manner, but they are getting the training that is required by law. So that is not what the intent here is, not to seek anything past that, if that makes sense. So what we found for the master plan is for all of the agencies that provided classes and the quantity of folks who would come to the training center. This is the total contact class hours that would be provided there per agencies. And it is, do want to mention that we did collect hours for the Kannapolis Fire Department, but they are seeking a lot of training on their own and their own training grounds. So these are hours that are elected for the master plan, but they chose not to participate as the project moved forward in phase 1. Within those hours, not only are they categorized by agency, but they're also categorized by, in a way, level of importance. So you'll see this category 1 for each of the agencies is about half of the hours, and that is the hours being accomplished currently at a minimum level due to lack of facilities. So that's about half of the hours that these agencies are getting their training currently. The second category is about 19%, and that is hours currently not being accomplished due to lack of facilities. Category 3 is 14%, and that is hours being carried out at a satisfactory level of competence, so you're doing good there. And category 4 is career advancement hours. Okay, hopefully that makes sense to you. So what you see here and what we really want to concentrate here are categories 1 and 2, which make up a vast majority of the hours and really are the report out from all of your agencies that, hey, we're getting by, but it's really, we can't do certain things, or we're doing them, just at a minimum level. So the next piece in this plan is, well, what does that mean? What do all those hours, where are you going to train? So we do a calculation based on the amount of hours available in a year. It's a simple sort of efficiency factor. And that's based on 7 to 5 Monday through Friday hours of operation, some buffer for maintenance, vacations, holidays, etc., and a little bit of time for spontaneous training. If you have a call you're going to have to train specifically for, it gives a little time for the Sheriff's Department or Police Department to show up at the training tower, just for instance, and practice room clearing based on the exact scenario they know they're walking into. Okay, so the table on the right is the efficiency factor for the types of classrooms that were sought in all of the classes provided. So I'll start with the clean classroom, and that is a traditional classroom, carpet, tables and chairs, all the AV and connectivity you would want, a nice ceiling, and the hours for that classroom were about 5,650 hours, or when compared against the hours available in a year, yielded about 3. Now, you can see down in some of the other classrooms, it's a percentage, so it's not an exact science, and we don't translate that into an exact program. You'll find later that we may, in this instance, we may entertain the idea of a, 2 25-person classrooms that have a movable partition and open up to 50, just for instance, to provide the capacity of 2 25-person and the 50 at one time. So within the classroom needs, and you'll see the prop needs next, that's how we sort of make the assessment of how many or how big each of the elements are. It is not just based on a simple, well, I think I need X, Y, or Z. It's really based on the class hours data that were collected from all of the agencies. outside of the classrooms, all of the practical training or live fire training or range training, for instance, are all part of the prop hours. So within this table, you'll see training towers, burn buildings, firing ranges, drill pads, et cetera, and you'll see all of the hours that were associated with one or more of the classes in each of those. So at the top, the training tower, drill tower, as it is sometimes referred to, generally comes in at a high range of use. Next is the burn building. The training tower would contain some burn props, but those would be Class B or propane or natural gas props, whereas the burn building would be live consumables. So hay, pallets, things like that, if that all makes sense. Okay. So within that,
Daniel, if you could go back to that one slide really quick. One of the things to remember about this slide is if you look at some of those open available percentage times, one of the things to remember that's really key is some of those training props might be associated with training that's low frequency but high risk preparedness, in which they might not be using them that often, but they're required in order to meet certain requirements. So when you see some of that extra available capacity on kind of the right side of that chart, that's just one of the lenses you really need to focus when you parse that data. Thanks.
So as we move forward, all the data and efficiency factors helped us formulate, this is a space program or list of program amenities that would go in certain buildings. So this wouldn't be a classroom and administration building. So we have a selection of office suites for folks who would be training staff who would be housed at this training center, along with a handful of classrooms, again, as indicated from all the training data, locker rooms, and all of the things that go along with the support of the building, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, janitor, communications, etc. And the next building would be a shared indoor range building. And again, the range sizes or lanes were based upon the sizes from North Carolina law enforcement training, as well as the class sizes that were indicated. The third bigger building on the site would be a dedicated Concord storage building. And you'll see how these spaces are separated when we get to the plan here between where is sort of shared amenities versus where is Concord specific amenities. But this would be a Concord specific storage building for to house their fire academy, as well as some of their indoor storage for some of their police vehicles. And finally, what we came to here is these, if you can concentrate on these two columns, these are what would eventually become phase one. This in green is the list of everything that's included if everybody got everything they asked for within the training classes, okay? So this is sort of the menu, and then off to the right in the purple boxes are the things that were selected to move forward within that phase one. You probably all have heard the budget number, and the budget is really, again, the sum of these two, along with the program elements of this, which is the sum of the two pieces together. They're in separate columns at the moment because Concord wanted to see all of the elements that they selected as a priority to move forward. Okay, and when we get to the phase 1 portion, we'll go over what elements those are. Okay. Within this budget, we've included all of the building elements, all of the training ground elements and props, as well as site development and all of the non-construction or indirect construction costs. So AV equipment, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, geotechnical engineering, copiers, support vehicles, inspections, professional services, tap fees, all those things we try to look at as part of the total budget and not just sort of one line item for what you would write a check to the contractor for or the construction budget. So hopefully that makes sense. So with that, we assessed the site in question here, and it's really comprised of this total piece here that looks kind of a very odd shape. And I'm sure you've heard of a lot of different numbers of acres that have been being thrown around, and it's a little odd in that the usable acres or the acres that we seek to use is very vastly different from the total acres. So at the moment, for context, this is Highway 49 here. If I zoom out here, Frank Lisk Park up at the top here. There's a railroad line, which is the black dash. Overhead power distribution, which is yellow here and yellow here. And the current only access to our site is off of Stow Road, which is this road along here, along it's technically an access road to the antenna. That's back over here. So with this purple portion being having a heavy drop from your left to your right into the floodplain over here, this purple sort of triangle space over here that's approximately 10 acres on the other side of the tracks, and only really having a little sliver of real access here. There's 11 acres of development area potential that will be deeded to Concord over on this portion, but it has it is formally on the other side of the tracks. And we've elected to try and keep as many of the access roads and overhead power distribution as possible, because relocating those things really costs a significant amount of the budget and doesn't really get put into training in any way. So we really try to focus on the shared amenities here within this approximately 30-acre orange piece, along with the 4 acres right on the other side of the existing overhead power distribution and access road to the antenna. Okay. For Stow Road here is a 1-lane road, if you're not familiar, in each direction. So it is not seen as a road that can take a lot of high traffic. So we are also seeking a right in and right out directly from Highway 49 that would allow a single point of ingress and egress into the shared amenities portion of the site, and would not be, or the public safety personnel who come to the site for training would not be blocked potentially in or trapped in the site by the railroad crossing at this single point, if that makes sense. So how the master plan amenities laid out on site, again, Highway 49, right in, right out. All of the shared amenities were concentrated in the middle here. And then again, this would be the Concord property where they would have their own portion of classrooms, their storage buildings, some covered parking, and along with some of the other training props that only they are licensed to provide. So that's Swiftwater Training and USAR, just for instance. Okay. From that, we also looked at existing training conditions, and this was one way we all came to an agreement on what amenities would move forward to phase 1. So we looked at the current training props and amenities that Concord Fire currently has. We looked at the Sheriff's Office existing range, the EMS building for the county, along with Rowan Cabarrus Community College, where many of the agencies, at least fire agencies, travel to use their training tower and their Class A burn building right here in the back, along with their classroom building here. And what was found from that really is that, we'll start with Rowan, it's currently overscheduled. So it's extremely hard for agencies to get into the facilities at the college. And if they can, it is a very long wait for them to be able to get the training they need, and extremely hard for them to reschedule if and when things come up. The firearms training facility from the Sheriff's Office here, they've sort of outgrown it. It was constructed about 30 years ago, and it only has 12 lanes, and it can be used for some fixed line handgun training, etc. No classrooms on site, so it's very limiting in that manner. That being said, let's move on forward here to phase 1. We took the same approach to as from the master plan to phase 1, and assessed which classes would be offered in the priority elements, and those elements are an indoor firing range, Class A burn building, driver skills course, a drafting pit, a grinder pad, a 400 by 400 foot concrete driver skills pad, a pre-engineered training tower, and then all of the utilities and ingress and egress from Highway 49. So these are the hours that came from filtering out what classes would be offered within phase 1, and as you can see here, Kannapolis Fire was not included in this list. And we assessed where those hours landed in categories. So again, we're looking at a very high level of the percentage landing in categories being provided at a minimum level or not being carried out due to lack of facilities. So that's these two categories up here at the top. And then did the same assessment with classrooms and props here. And we looked at how those amenities would lay out on site, and this was a little bit of a subtractive effort in a way, knowing that we would have the opportunity to fine-tune, make adjustments, and really talk through how training would occur with all of the agencies as we move forward. But again, we would include that right-in, right-out access from Highway 49 into a, we'll call it a buffer parking zone. So you would be allowed into here. The range building would have its own sort of security vestibule, probably just like coming into the county building there where you're checked, and then you're allowed access into further points, with the remainder of the training grounds being secure. And then again, this parcel over here being given over to Concord for their eventual development in the future. Something that's extremely important is then now that you have all the amenities and you're potentially maybe moving forward, how does this work? How do you work together? So we help provide an organizational structure between the three entities that are moving forward in the county, Concord, and Kannapolis. How does that governing board look? Who may or may not be voting members? And how do the user groups interface with that governing board, and then up to each of the respective commissions or councils. So this portion of the strategic plan makes some recommendations of how everybody may work together in order to have a successful organizational structure moving forward. In addition to just that first cost of how the facility is built, we also try to help figure out how the ongoing operations and maintenance costs may look over time. One way in which we looked at that, and by the way, these annual O&M costs are just representative for now, but we look at a split by hours. So if the sheriff's office intended to, for today, the hours that were collected, if they were going to be there 24,000 hours, or approximately 26% of the hours available, that would equate to 26% of the annual or operating cost. And again, just one way, just an example. Nothing. We haven't set down the road of really talking through how this actually may come to fruition quite yet. Okay. And then the go-forward plan really talks about recommendations to move forward. So finalizing the basis of that operational agreement, developing that formal agreement, acquiring the capital construction, the reinforcement aspect or the draw outside of the three entities, 6 agencies that this center may have. Can I answer any questions or go back to any portions?
Thank you for your presentation. Do I have any questions from board members?
I do.
Sure.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a question about the proximity to Frank Lisk Park. Just curious regarding the noise and the volume of noise that might be there for the folks that are at the park.
In terms of, I'll start with maybe visual. The Class A burn building will emit, I'll get to your noise too as well. Class A burn building will emit black smoke. It will, we believe, be distributed based on proximity before it enters the park. The Class B tower is theatrical smoke. So that white misty smoke will generally dissipate by the time it gets to the property line, probably. This site, unfortunately, does not allow any high-speed driver training. So in general, you will hear some tire squeaking for people doing slow-speed driver training on the skills pad, but it'll be of a pretty low volume, I would say. Obviously, if it's a dead silent day, no wind, no ambient noise, in the middle of the night, could you hear something if you were standing at the edge of the park? I would say probably, but there's a lot of industry happening around. There's going to be noise from people traversing on the highway. So we foresee it as a low sort of noise pollution opportunity to the park. Does that make sense?
It does. Yes, thank you.
One other component about any smoke that might be emanating from the Class A or the burn building is that certain environmental conditions have to be met too before a live burn can happen, or any type of burn activity there. So they'll be looking at prevailing winds and things like that. There'll be operational rules, but there's enough time and distance between the park that that smoke, typically in most facilities that we across the U.S., it would dissipate long before it would actually be perceived by anybody within the park. So.
Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Any other questions? All right. I'll just say, tonight's presentation is just for information for all of us here. My concerns, if this board decides to move forward with this, my concern would be the governing board of this facility. Cabarrus County will be carrying the debt on this facility, and of course we'll be receiving funds from other municipalities, but Cabarrus County will hold the debt, and we have got to make sure that we have the governing power of this facility in that situation. So that would be my feedback for this evening. But if there's nothing else, and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you both for being here in the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item 4.6, tax administration, and we have our tax administrator, David Thrift.
Good evening, Commissioners. North Carolina General Statute 105-369 requires that I report to you the amount of delinquent taxes from the current tax year. I will point out there's a typo in your agenda that would be the 2024 tax year that are liens on real property. So these are real estate related taxes still delinquent from 2024. So current amount due, total due is $12,220,698.66. We remove from that anything that's currently in bankruptcy protection, which is $37,704.43. And then those amounts that are currently under appeal at the Property Tax Commission, which is $3,525.49. So the total outstanding is $12,179,468.74. So having reported that to you, the next step is for this board to order advertisement of those taxes. We would request that be done March 30th, 2025.
And this is an item that we take up every year.
That's
Is that
correct. So the first meeting in February is always the time to report this.
Right. Okay. Do I have any questions from board members? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda is appointments to boards and committees. It looks like we have one for this month, and that would be for the Cabarrus County Human Services Advisory Board. Do I have any questions, comments?
I have a question as far as the appointment. We found out earlier today, a couple hours before this meeting, there were 21 applications on file. So do we have the dates of those applications? Because I don't agree with who we're putting on there, and I'm going to ask that we pull it off consent so I can vote against it, but I'm just curious how that happened, like what the process was for it.
I don't know the dates of the 21 applications, how long they're on file. That could be something that we can get together and address in our meeting in a couple of weeks to get some more details on that. I know that the Department of Social Services Board voted on this individual's recommendation to this board, and it was voted on unanimously. So it went through the process of application, vote of the Department of Human Services Board, unanimous vote, and then it's brought to us. But we can get you some more details.
I'd like the dates on it, because
Okay.
I looked through some of them, and we didn't get it in enough time to really look. But there's a lot of highly qualified people in those applications, so I'm curious about the dates.
All right. All right, moving on to the next item, 4.8, Board of Commissioners liaison positions. And Commissioner Wortman, you had asked for this item to be added to the agenda, so I'll turn the floor over to you.
And we had talked on the phone, that way I wanted you to know what was coming. I was removed from the Visitors Bureau as a liaison. This board wanted to reshuffle things, which I respect that. Mike Downs had a seat on the Visitors Bureau, and I enjoyed that board. It would still, so that's an open seat, and so you would still be on there in that spot. So I would like to see if this board will allow me to take Mike Downs' spot on that board.
Okay.
I truly enjoyed that one, and I wanted to see if you guys would consider that, so.
And I'm not sure that is still currently an open seat, because his is term appointed. And although he may not be employed with the county anymore, we will probably have to remove him to make an appointment. But we're working on a list of boards and committees that the previous manager was serving on, and I guess we'll look over that, and we'll cover this again in 2 weeks. All right. So with that being said, we will take a look at our regular agenda for February 18th. And I know you said you'd like to have item E1 moved to new business, and I would imagine we will move item E2 to new business. With that being said, do I have a motion for the approval of our regular meeting agenda?
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. And we do have a need for closed session pending litigation and personnel. So I will entertain a motion to go into closed session per North Carolina General Statute 143-318, decimal 11, A, 3, and 6. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed. All right, we're now in closed session. Thank you.